I'm now being joined by John Lebo. He's a former Speaker of Cross River State House of Assembly on the issue of the 76 oil wells dispute between Cross River State and Akwa Ibom. Of course, my guest earlier, Sam, actually says, look, this is really not about the 76 oil wells. There's a whole lot more. The new oil wells that have been discovered. Thank you very much for joining us on News Night. So where do we begin this conversation in a way that our viewers can actually have a good understanding of what the issues are? Of course, the root of the dispute dates back, to as far as 2002. And of course, the Supreme Court weighed in at some point in favor of Akwa Ibom State. But now, Cross River State is insisting that it is a littoral state and therefore lays claims to the 76 oil wells. But for you, what exactly is in dispute? Is it the 76 oil wells or these new discoveries? Which one exactly is it?
Okay, first, maybe let me just take a breakdown.
Yes,
first of all,
please.
we must distinguish between the judgment of the International Court of Justice,
Right,
the judgment of the Supreme Court of the International Court of Justice 2002, the judgment of the Supreme Court in 2012,
right,
and the National Boundary Commission Office of the Surveyor General's activities in 2004. Now, in 2002, the judgment of the court presided over three estuaries: the Cross River estuaries, the Akwa Ibom estuaries, and Rio de Rey. The judgment of the court placed the boundary between Nigeria and Cameroon on the mouth of the Akwa Ibom estuary, drew with a line, a median line called an east point down to the G point into the Gulf of Guinea. In a boundary dispute of international nature, one line would have been enough, but the court drew two lines. The second line, which is called the West Point Median Line, provided a maritime access because the mouth of the estuary in international law by Article 7 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the mouth of the estuary, even if it's located in internal water, is called the mouth of the sea and is given littoral access. So the court drew the second median line, which is the access. That is why even from Akwa Ibom, you cannot go to Cameroon without passing through Cross River. You have to pass through that median line. So the access lies with Cross River. So that line, protection line, is there. That's number one. Now, I've heard the talk about Marwa line. There's nothing like Marwa line. The 1913 Anglo-German treaty that Cameroon went to court for interpretation was agreed between Britain and the UK. In 1930, Cameroon and the UK and Germany, also Germany and the UK also agreed on an implementation strategy of the 1913 treaty in 1930 called the Thompson-Marchand Declaration. So the judgment of the court was not based on what they are calling Marwa line is an agreement between Gowon and Amadou Ahidjo, agreed in a city called Marwa. Cameroon invoked Article 38(1) of the ICJ judgment. The agreement between the president of Nigeria and Cameroon, is it a colonial treaty? So the court decided on the basis of that colonial treaty. That's number one. Now, so the Cross River State, the Cross River estuary, was the judgment, the line touched the Cross River State estuary, but it preserved the mouth of the sea. That mouth of the sea is the Nigerian access. Because in international law, the law of the sea does not allow you under Article 38 to provide what they call concavity risk principle. That is, you cannot render a coastline landlocked. The purpose of the Geneva Convention on the Law of the Sea, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and the Vienna Convention on Treaties is to protect that right.
So now, if I get you clearly, you are standing on the decision of the previous agreement between the colonial masters.
Yes.
As against what Gowon and Amadou Ahidjo agreed on.
Because Cameroon went to court under Article 38 to challenge, to ask for the interpretation of treaties, of the colonial treaty. That's one. Now, the boundary on the ground placed that judgment on the mouth of the estuary, not on the mouth of the Cross River. Now, if you sit down and look at it, there's an ICJ map. That ICJ map clearly shows a demarcation between the Akwa Ibom and the Cross River estuary. The Akwa Ibom estuary was part of the Cross River estuary under Bakassi, which is gone, but we have this estuary. Now, back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court judgment.
Yes.
In 2004, Cross River State wrote to the National Boundary Commission to say His Excellency has conducted a case management, has done a search in the International Court of Justice, and we have gone to the Joint Meets Commission and United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel. We have seen the ICJ map, and we have seen the gap in the body of water that was not seeded. And we wrote a petition to the President, and we wrote to the National Boundary Commission. Can you give us the map showing the boundary between Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, based on the judgment of the ICJ? Show us the boundary between Akwa Ibom State and Cross River State, the internal boundary, so that we can resolve this matter.
Did you get those maps?
We got a reply, and I have the reply here, signed by the surveyor, the DG of the National Boundary Commission, clearly saying that the boundary between Nigeria and Cameroon, Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea has not been demarcated.
Right.
And saying that the boundary between Akwa Ibom and Cross River State has also not been made visible on the ground. This is the letter. I can give you a copy, signed by Adamu Adaji, who is the NDC.
And the National Boundary Commission is
positioned to carry that responsibility. But the Constitution also gives the Surveyor General of the Federation the responsibility. So we went to the Supreme Court and discovered that there is a map. There is what is called an oil dichotomy study model, not a map. The map you're talking about is the Nigerian administrative map. That is a study model. A study model is, do me a design of how I can appropriate a certain particular number of wells. Right. That is a study model, different from the map. So the Nigerian administrative map, which is 2004 map, is different from this map.
Well, I wish we had all night to
have the summary.
What exactly is Cross River asking for now?
So what Cross River State did was that when we wrote to the Surveyor General, he said there's no map on ground. So we said, okay, we went to revenue mobilization. Why did you declare us as an non-oil producing state? He said, no, you don't. If you provide fresh evidence, this is a letter by the chairman of revenue mobilization. If you provide fresh evidence of oil wells, you can be listed. The Supreme Court never said. The Supreme Court never said you cannot have oil wells. So we provided this evidence, 600 page of 245 surface coordinates of oil wells and reservoir coordinates of 188 wells, and then 41 reservoir straddle between Nigeria and Cameroon in that well. And we sent it to the President. The President minuted it to revenue mobilization. Revenue mobilization came to Cross River State with the Surveyor General of Akwa Ibom State and all the team from Akwa Ibom. Because of the dispute they had with us, they went on ground and confirmed 230 wells.
For you,
so this assignment,
that's part of the bone of contention for Cross River State.
Now Akwa Ibom, now what is happening is to place that coordinate in the administrative map of Nigeria. It's a scientific process. It will show what is in Akwa Ibom and what is in Cross River. When they came back from the field, they shared the maps, the coordinate with Cross River and Akwa Ibom. We have our coordinates. We place it on the map. We know the number of wells we have. We know, unfortunately, we will accept the wells that went into Akwa Ibom. Akwa Ibom should also have the coordinate. They should place that. It's a reconciliation process. Right. So as far as we are concerned, Cross River State, they talked about Supreme Court judgments. If they have the coordinates of the 76 oil wells of the Supreme Court, they should bring it. We'll remove it from this 246. So that is the Cross River State argument. And it's something we expect that at this point, we can't run away from the matter. We need to sit down and
no doubt this conversation cannot resolve the matter. We hope that it can be resolved, if not legally, maybe politically, and maybe in a brotherly manner. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. John Lebo, of course, a former lawmaker in Cross River State. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.